have wheels will travel. That's what we believe at Autocar India. Now we've traveled the length and breadth of the country. We've been to all four corners of India, and now we are taking it to the next level, which is crossing the borders. We are exploring new frontiers, and in this Renault Duster, what we're going to be doing this time is driving all the way from India to Cambodia. So Sumit, here we are at the flag off of the Unstoppable Drive. But clearly, the Duster has been a vehicle which is a very outdoors vehicle.
So I see our Duster customers to be really, true unstoppable Indians, passionate people, those who are driven by passion and those who want to enjoy life.
The journey began in Delhi, and as we passed through Agra, Varanasi, Patna, Siliguri, Guwahati, and finally onto Imphal on the east-west corridor, the Duster's workout began. The monsoon had left very little of the road in many parts, but we just pummeled through it all. After a 4-day journey, we finally reached Imphal. Imphal is barely 130 kilometers from the border, and a short drive through the hilly region takes you right to the edge of India, on what is now marked as AH1, or the Asian Highway 1. Immigration done, custom stamps received, we were ready to cross over.
Here we are at the India-Myanmar border, the Friendship Bridge. And if you just look at this bridge, it's hard to imagine that this road, this little narrow strip, is actually the gateway out of this country, because there's no other land border you can actually use except this little bit. Well, we've just crossed over into Myanmar, and I can tell you it's just always a thrill crossing a land border, because you know you're in a different country. For one, you have to change your time. In Myanmar, we are 1 hour ahead, and as you can see, just after crossing the Friendship Bridge, we are now on the right-hand side of the road, because that's how they drive in Myanmar. It's just the whole idea of doing a border crossing by land, which is so different from when you fly, because when you fly thousands of kilometers, of course you're in a completely different part of the world and you expect everything to be completely different. But over here, within 100 meters, things are just immediately different.
Calais has become a town that's so much bigger than it was, and it's amazing to see the difference in Myanmar from the last time around that I was here.
Photography-wise, it's the color of the sky, it's the clouds, it's the trees, it's everything that just work together and ensure you get a beautiful looking frame.
There are 48 of these old bridges from Calais to Tamil, so we were a little worried.
Last time that I was here, it was the bridges had broken down because of the rain. It's improved a lot. All the bridges are okay now, so it was pretty much smooth driving into Calais.
The Duster was really being put to the test, not only by the road conditions, but the weather too. The rain gods decided to let loose, and we drove to Mandalay mostly in torrential rain, with small breaks of sunshine every now and then. Water and slush just don't bother the Duster at all. It keeps marching on. Myanmar is dotted with stupas that have ornamental gates, and we just couldn't get enough of photo ops along the way. Well, we're on our way from Calais to Mandalay, and we're taking a short break in what is absolutely typical of this region, Burma teak. I mean, we all know this good solid wood back home and yearn for it, but look at it. I mean, there's just piles and piles of it around. As evening fell, we got another sensational photo op at the river Irrawaddy just before hitting Mandalay. "480 kilometers done in Mandalay, we called it a night." Well, we're well into Myanmar now. Long drive from Calais yesterday brought us into Mandalay, and this morning we've had a nice little trip around the city, looking at the 729 stupas that were just outside our hotel, the walls of the palace, and of course the lions, which are the gateway to Mandalay Hills. Now we've settled down to a good old Myanmari lunch before we leave for Bagan. You know what's favorite here is rice. There are over 135 varieties of rice in this country. It's the first thing you get at every meal. A large pot like this is served and turned upside down onto your plate. It's really a staple and a favorite here.
I think the one thing over here where Myanmar is really far behind is the quality of the roads. They are really pretty bumpy. In fact, I think we've done about nearly 900 kilometers, and there's not been a single kilometer of a really smooth surface. Even the highway was a little bumpy.
Yeah, that's right. But I think the Duster actually handled all this stuff really well. Like the ride has been really stable overall, including that highway stretch.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the real confidence you get from a car that really rides us.
But the real highlight was Bagan. This small town was the capital of the Kingdom of Bagan from the 9th to the 13th century. Around 10,000 pagodas, stupas and temples were built on the plains, but only 2,200 remain. All I can say is even these many left us awestruck. I feel like I've stepped back into time. I'm in this small little town in Myanmar that's, steeped in history. Bagan has temples, and I'm not talking about one or two of them. I'm talking about thousands of them. These were built between the 11th and 13th century. And if you look around me, as far as the eye can see, right down to the horizon, you can see massive of them.
The feel over here, it's just so relaxed, so casual. You can just drive up to the monuments. I'm told there's absolutely no vandalism here. There's just a kind of a freewheeling ambience to this place. It just makes it absolutely fantastic.
I'm kind of wondering why so many of them were built right next to each other around the same complex. And the history also over here is strange. Each king that built one of these was killed by his son because each one wanted to ascend the throne. So there's a lot of history that's here in this area in Bagan, a lot to be learned.
The beauty about it is that even though it's not so well developed, everybody's so content over here with everything that's going on, and I mean, there's no rush and there's no greed.
I just hope they don't change. I just hope they don't become materialistic like the rest of the world, because this place is still cocooned And I just hope it stays that way.
We began the day by going to a local toddy distilling center. The crude and basic process is effective, with alcohol content going up to 50% sometimes. We actually got into the local spirit. Speaking of spirits, for the non-alcoholic Hormuz, even the fumes were too much. So really seeping into the Myanmari culture and tradition here now, sitting, sipping toddy that's freshly got from the tree. Well, it's not really alcohol at this point, it's just sweet palm juice. And of course the tanaka on my face, which is cooling me down incredibly. It's like having an AC on your face, literally. I can now understand why the women walk around with it all day. Hopefully by the end of the day I'll have really glowing skin and a healthy system.
Now, the quality of roads in Myanmar, yes, they are a bit patchy, but what is absolutely amazing is that there are just no cars, so the roads are just absolutely empty. And clearly what's really obvious is that Myanmar as a car market, well, it's been non-existent for decades. There's no industry here to speak of, and slowly things are improving. What we hear is that the car market is opening up a bit, but still imports are prohibitively expensive.
One of the biggest improvements is the highway connecting Mandalay to Yangon. It sometimes extends into 10 lanes as well. After another typical Myanmari lunch, I decided the empty highway was just too tempting and I took to the wheel. I love driving through Myanmar. I mean, it's almost like the powers that be took out their paintbrush and said, let's paint this country onto the map. And the Duster just makes light of driving no matter what you're doing. I mean, you can be a really lazy driver. You don't have to work the gears too much. Every time you put your foot down, there's a healthy dose of torque to get you moving again. And what's really been wonderful is we've really needed to, tank up this car. The range is just so massive, and it's giving us some pretty amazing fuel consumption figures. What's really amazed me on this journey is, being a woman, a clean loo is a requirement. You can't just go anywhere, especially on a long journey. And even the tiniest of places we've been to, roadside dhabas, the loos have been spick and span and clean. It's, I think, the way of the people. They just sort of respect things around them, cleanliness, and I think that's a lesson that people in our country can learn from our neighbors. For some of us, the journey ended at Bago, but the Duster is still marching on. So stay tuned in the weeks to come to see the rest of the drive to Cambodia.